Good morning, everyone. I love standing up here and seeing all these happy faces and beautiful souls of people I love and care so much about. I love that Kate read scripture this morning. I love following her, and I have a feeling I'm going to be following her the rest of my life. And Bess as well. This morning, we're going to talk about a remarkable story in the book of Luke. It's also a story that's told in Matthew, and each one is slightly different from each other. And there's a lot of discussion about how to reconcile all of that. But the truth is, the Luke passage to me is even more astonishing because this miracle happens and this man had never even met Jesus. This miracle happens and the slave that was healed had never even met Jesus, which I find astonishing. You know, it was not a very impressive town, Capernaum. In fact, I would kind of describe it, not only was it just a small fishing village on the northwestern side of the lake, but it would be, for all intents and purposes, a town of the disenfranchised. And let me describe what that means. Jesus was rejected by his own town, by the people that he grew up with in Nazareth. And where did he end up? He ended up in Capernaum. It became eventually his second home. The Jews were there under Roman occupation and didn't even have a synagogue. And then there was the centurion, who we know very little about, except that he was in charge of 80 to 100 Roman soldiers. He was a Gentile, perhaps not a Roman, and his job was to manage troops and keep the locals in control and solidly under Roman rule. And how he thought he ended up in this place, I have no idea. But this place is where something truly remarkable, something truly miraculous happened. This world would have seemed like a dangerous place, Capernaum, and a place where oppression and subjugation are the norm. It's best to keep your head down, I would think. The Jews in Capernaum, a centurion that would have been the very symbol of oppression. Jews despised Romans. Romans despised Jews. That's just a fact to be accepted, right? Maybe not. Such a state would describe towns and villages all over Israel, all under occupation. It would have been easy enough for each of these groups to keep to themselves, to simply live in the same community without community. But that was not this place. Even today, it seems that we often live this way, fearful, walled off in our own enclaves, keeping to our own tribe, associating with those who we think are like us. We reinforce our own echo chambers through social media and through our favorite sources of news. And when we do associate with people, they're like us, right? And why? To keep us safe. But safe from what? This is a story about community that was not only about safety, but was about the very life of an individual. Yet, even before the healing of the centurion's slave, even before the appearance of Jesus in Capernaum with his fledgling disciples, something amazing and exceptional was happening in this small fishing village. In a world with no expectations of relationships between Jews and Romans, something special happened in Capernaum. A special connection was being formed between a local religious group and an officer of the Roman army in charge of controlling the population. A centurion and a small group of Jews had defied every convention, every expectation of how they were to behave towards one another. The phrase expressed by the Jewish elder toward Jesus says it all. For he loves our people. Astonishing. The centurion loved them so much, cared for them to such a degree, that he built them a synagogue. But they built more than a synagogue. They were, in fact, building community and connection where none existed before. As if this were not surprising enough, the centurion, in defiance of every expectation about how you treat slaves, valued one as if he were his own son. Not surprising, but yet scandalous. That would have been scandalous in that day. I contend that the miracle healing of this young man was enabled and precipitated by the miracle of community that was forming across religious and cultural lines. Save for his connection with the Jewish community, the centurion might never have heard of Jesus, might never have heard of the miracles he was performing. You can imagine the words. He's talking to his Jewish elder friends, and he's saying, I am so distraught. I am so upset that I am losing this, my servant, this boy. He's close to death. And the elders say, but have you heard? There's this Jew, this man named Jesus, and he's healing people in our midst. He might never have heard that if he had not been in relationship with these men. Community is not something that's just nice to have. Community can be the difference between life and death. And in this case, it was that very difference. Faith is not an attribute just for our tribe. It's not. The centurion was neither Jewish nor Christian. Yet his faith was deemed greater than any found in all of Israel. Can you imagine being an elder, I being an elder, and hearing this from Jesus? If Jesus can be surprised by the faith of a Roman centurion, the enforcer of Roman rule, how might we be surprised by the faith of someone completely outside of our religious community, outside of our religious tradition? And are we looking for them? It's an important question to ask. If Jesus had come to us in this space and said, you know that imam down the street? He has more faith than all of the churches in America. How would we feel about that? Astonished, for sure. Perhaps non-Christians who exude the essence of godliness in the world should be not only recognized, but celebrated. Do you find it odd that this centurion, having never met Jesus, would have such a faith in him? Faith in his ability to heal this dying boy that he cared so much about? Such faith that he would say that it wasn't even necessary for Jesus to come to his house. Such faith as to say, just say the word, and I know he'll be healed. Remarkable. I contend that the centurion's faith was something that was growing in him long before he ever heard the name Jesus. He had already learned that He could be an agent for good in the world. He would say to one, "Go," and he goes. To another, "Come," and he comes. To a slave, "Do this," and he does it. He could say, "Go build a synagogue," and they would. The centurion knew well that his position, his agency, meant that he could defy expectations and be a powerful source for good in the world. So when he heard of Jesus, he recognized instantly that this was like his own agency, his own authority. Jesus had agency and authority too, with a direct connection to God and with the power to save a life, something that the centurion simply could not do. You may have heard me speak in the past of a mantel clock in our house, given to me by my Aunt Maureen. And I apologize, I am my dad in this moment. If you've heard this, you're just going to have to hear it again, because there's one person in the room who hasn't heard it. So, and that's my dad to a T. My Aunt Maureen, on the occasion of our marriage, gave us a grandfather clock. It belonged to her grandfather and my great-grandfather, who's named Scott. And this is what she wrote about him. He lived the life of a true Christian. No widows or orphans went without food or clothing. I know of a distant relative of his who was a widow with 4 children. He furnished money, food, clothing for the family until the last child was out of school. Not only that, he took 2 of my grandmother's brothers, Kyle and Kai Webb, and sent them to private schools with his own children and then through college. Grandpa was an honorable man, intelligent, kind, and had a warm personality and a great sense of humor. He was not only the most prosperous man in the community, but he was the most loved and respected. I benefit from the consequences of, and I would say the miracle of, my great-grandfather's life of love and generosity to this very day. And every Sunday morning I wind that clock and think of his example and his agency for good in the world. He was the centurion of his community. We all have agency, every single one of us. Whether we command 100 men or women, or have tremendous financial resources, or perhaps only command our choice to do what we would like with our afternoon. You have agency to choose to do something good, something positive and restorative, something good and right, in defiance of every expectation in the world that you have the right to misbehave. I think of my 25 years in the corporate world, and I blame Eddie for all 25 years because he got me my job. But I learned very quickly in that environment that coercion and fear would produce results, but not for very long. Every opportunity to respect, to acknowledge, to recognize and celebrate the humanity of every person I worked for saved my corporate career multiple times, because they didn't do just what was required. They were watching out for me, and I was watching out for them. Just as these Jewish elders were watching for the centurion, and he was watching out for them. That was community. Fear and coercion are the tools of bullies and weaklings, and it never gets them what they desire, which is respect and admiration. Where you find community and connection, where barriers are torn down, where understanding grows through shared experiences, where love, yes, love, is fostered between sworn enemies, it is there in that crucible that miracles become possible. It is there that Christ enters. It is there that, and only there, that the miraculous occur. Only then can the healing begin. Christ is the great healer. We live in a scary time. Oppression and coercion seem to be all around. A mean-spirited tension has taken over our public discourse. And our lowest impulse says, what? Keep your head down. Stay quiet. Stay close to your tribe. Carefully guard what is yours and hope for the best. But to be clear, this is not the way of the centurion, and it is not the way of Jesus Christ. It should not surprise any of us that in this small fishing village on the northwestern coast of the Sea of Galilee was the place where Jesus would start his ministry, and a place that would in turn change the entire world forever. It was there that Jews and a centurion were already defining expectations about what community could be. And that connection, that community, gave space for a miracle to occur, for a life to be saved. We can't perform miracles. At least I haven't been able to do it thus far. But we can prepare a place, an environment for them to happen. Our agency, used for good, for the benefit of other human beings, creates a space for Christ to enter, for Christ to heal. Perhaps, just perhaps, healing in this world depends first upon the establishment of community built upon mutual respect for one another and a generous spirit. And what happens after that? We wait for the miracles to come, and they will. When we draw on the transformative power of renewal and healing taking place all around us, miracles will happen when we believe that they can.